We're back. It's Jim. It's Amadeus, and we are here. Amadeus, I got to tell you, my friend, boy, did we have a weekend of crazy football, both in the pro ranks and then, of course, in college as well.
Yeah, this was the weekend we've really been waiting for all season. It came and went, and now we're in that January lull right before the national championship next week in
Right.
college football. But yeah, definitely, both NFL and college. There was some wild games over the weekend. Obviously, in the NFL, you could treat this week. Or the last week that just passed as sort of like the last week for a lot of these teams
Right.
because there's going to be a ton not playing this week. That's for sure.
Right. It's funny. My mother called me on Sunday morning, and before she even said hello, she said, "Can you believe the the uh, the way that the Dallas got won that game last night? The Lions got cheated out of the game." And I'm like, okay, well, we're off and running, with that. But man, that was a crazy ending to a football game.
Yeah, there's a lot to say about that one. Very interesting ending there. Obviously, it's come out now that that referee crew is not going to be reffing the playoffs. There's been a few primetime
Gee, I
games
wonder
where
why.
yeah, they had the the blatant face mask in the one
Hmm.
Dolphins Jets game, and they
Right.
had the missed pass interference on the uh, Green Bay game there against the Chiefs. So yeah, not the best reffing crew, that's for sure. What an interesting game though, just because
Yeah.
like I'm all for going for the two,
Right.
but once you get flagged,
Oh,
you
that
know,
was stupid. That was
pick the
absolutely
extra
stupid.
point. At
Well,
that point, it was
okay.
just being hard headed.
Let's okay. So let's just go that. Okay, fine. They got screwed on the 2 point conversion. All right. Fair enough. They then get the penalty. They don't get it on the penalty. So they're okay. You got two times. One, you got screwed out of it. The second time, you're now 5 yards deeper, right? You're at 7 yard line. You didn't make it. Fine. All right. You get yet another opportunity to tie the game and go off and, you know, do whatever. You're either going to win or you're going to lose. But no, Dan Campbell has to go for a third time. And that's the thing that fine. You want to try it? Okay, good. But the fact that you got a reprieve on it, you know, and got to do it over again for a third time, and you still didn't go for the extra point, that's just on him.
Yeah, definitely a little stubbornness from Dan Campbell there, but at the same time, shame on the NFL for coming
Mhm.
out afterwards and defending the referees, saying that it was gamesmanship. It goes against gamesmanship, and it was a deceitful way to try and trick the other team that backfired. No, 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 no. Obviously, the NFL didn't watch the video of what happened. The guy that they claimed reported eligible wasn't even there. So I don't
Right.
know. Goodell just continues to look like a massive clown, and obviously, that he loves the way the NBA is trashing their league because he's bringing the
Mhm.
NFL right in the same direction.
I don't I mean, one thing I noticed on Sunday was every time the player comes in to, checks in as a receiver, the lineman checks in as a receiver, they got the number right. They they didn't get it wrong. And they declaratively said what it was. And just for those of you out there who don't know why, um, you get an illegal formation if you don't have an offensive receiver covering a lineman. Okay, so in other words, if one side of the field you stack all your receivers on one side of the field, and that you don't say that the tackle is eligible, then he's not. Then technically, if you put all your receivers on one side of the field, and the tackle is not eligible, then you basically don't have the line covered on one side. Therefore, it's an illegal it's an illegal formation. So that's why the tackle is eligible on those plays. 9 times out of 10, the tackle is eligible. Doesn't mean a damn thing. It's not like the tackle is going to go out and go for a 2-point conversion for a touchdown. That occasionally happens, and like we saw the game the other night. But normally, it's just to make sure that I'm going to flood the zone on one side. I'm not going to mess with the other. So that's the rationale for why do you have to have why would you have a lineman be designated as a receiver who isn't a lineman at all? I mean, who isn't a receiver at all?
Yeah, and that's the other thing about that play. So obviously, there was 2 flags, even if they got the reporting right. It's not an illegal touching, but it's still an illegal formation.
Correct.
So
that's the actual line that you should have used.
Yeah, so it's not going to count regardless, but the way they went about it, trying to hide the fact that like they didn't make a mistake when they did, it's just absolute clownery from the NFL. Like just come out and say, the refs are idiots.
Right.
That crew is a bunch of idiots.
Right.
And they called the wrong thing. Yes, there was a flag on the play. They called the wrong flag.
Right.
That's why there's the spotlight on it.
Right.
Wasn't going to count regardless, but
right.
just I think a little bit of clownery from both sides. Just the NFL, the way they handled that with the refs, and then obviously Dan Campbell. You don't get it the first time, you don't get it the second time, and you're still
usually gets a third time. I mean, who gets a third time? That's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's just silly, but
and,
what are you
obviously that game ended up being huge because here on Sunday, here come my Cardinals coming to knock the Eagles down a peg.
That was another one of my mother's things later. I spoke to her and she was like, the Eagles are terrible. She's off the Eagles. So
yeah, I've had a lot of my family ask me, what's wrong with the Eagles and Chiefs this year? And I go, they're just, they're not they're on a down year. And everyone responds to me with, it's the Taylor Swift effect. It's infecting both teams at this point. She's like a poison. Everybody thought that, it was going to be all, roses and whatever for these teams. No, she's actually a poison to the two teams. It's become a distraction, and it's very evident that the Chiefs specifically, their head is not in the game any way you cut it.
Well, not to prove that I'm a Swiftie, but anyway, in the immortal words of Taylor Swift, shake it off. Okay, shake it off, guys. It's not Taylor Swift's problem that anybody in a red jersey on Kansas City can't catch a pass. I mean,
look, it's not her fault, but her presence is there and it's affecting the team. And it's just the players got to be better. They got to be more focused. And clearly, they're letting this. They're letting obviously Kelsey's not have. Well, I mean, he's still having an okay year. He's leading the team in
receptions.
In receptions, if you want to chalk that up to a good thing, considering his tight end. But
but the thing that to me specifically about the Kansas City Chiefs in watching their games, they really didn't go out and try to replace their wide receivers with legit wide receivers. Those guys are not. I don't think they have a legit, number one wide receiver on that team.
No, and that's the other thing, right? So it's easy to pin everything on Travis Kelce and say Taylor Swift's a distraction. But the other thing is Patrick Mahomes has clearly regressed this season, and whether he's too focused on all these commercials he's doing now and the star he's become, or I don't know, maybe he's just getting a little too big-headed at this point, because that's basically, you're right. They went into this season with the Tom Brady mindset. I can make any wide receiver, one of the best in the league. And it's very evident this season that no, you can't. Tom Brady in that sense.
Well, I'm going to go with the GM on this one, because for almost every team in National Football League, each year you turn over 25% of your roster. Okay. The way that Kansas City's been doing it in the past is they've had some good, solid wide receivers, but even when they haven't had the good wide receivers, they've had a good offensive line. Well, when you don't bolster up the wide receiving core, and then you don't do anything about your offensive line, and you still are they're in such a weak division that they can still get away with it and win the division. But it doesn't mean that you're the dominant team in the league, because they're not, and they just can't do it because they just don't have the personnel. And they can blame it on Taylor Swift, they can blame it on Andy Reid, they can blame it on Patrick Mahomes. But at the end of the day, it's the general manager who gets the players to, to stand out there, and it's Andy Reid's job to coach them, and it's their job to make plays. And we can blame it on anything we want to, but at the end of the day, it's the people who are responsible are the people who get paid the money to catch the ball.
Yeah, and honestly, you could actually say the Chiefs were lucky to win the division this year.
Yeah.
Obviously, they came in as the big favorite to win it,
Right.
but at the end of the day, you got to look at
Yep.
this division like, if Brandon Staley wasn't such a clown and dropped the
Right.
ball with that team the last 3 years, you had a very strong contender that could have went toe-to-toe
Right.
with you. Not to mention the fact that the two teams that actually still had playoff chances up to last week, maybe if they had a little more competence at the head coaching level, then you could have the Broncos and even the Raiders challenging.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
as far as I'm concerned, this was a lucky season for the Chiefs.
Mhm.
And obviously the big story is we're going to see Patrick Mahomes on the road for the first time ever in the playoff games. And my guess is he's only probably going to play the one game, because they're not going very far.
He's going to have what we like to call the Aaron Rodgers effect, and that is, you get your game, and then, oh, by the way, you lose.
And the other thing with them is, they haven't even been that good at home this year. So
No.
yeah, they win the division and they get maybe the one home game,
Yeah,
but
they'll get
they
that home
could
game.
even lose that at home.
Yeah, which I'll tell you what, Arrowhead is an intimidating place to play. It's loud. It's it's difficult to hear what's going on. So yeah, that's a problem. That's absolutely a problem. One problem we don't have, and I should say that isn't there, is the Ravens. I think they proved, if anybody wasn't paying attention to them, that you probably should pay attention to the Harbaugh boys.
Yeah, definitely. Year of the Harbaugh, I guess. But
Yeah.
the Ravens, they've put on a show the last few weeks. I mean, this past week against Miami was crazy. Now, the game against the 49ers, yes, they played a very good game, but it just, the 49ers seemed off that night. It seemed a bit of a comedy of errors. A lot of those interceptions, ball was getting bounced up in the air. That don't want to take credit away from the Ravens, because they clearly are, the best team in the NFL right now. But I still like my 49ers chances in a rematch. I'm not going to chalk that game up to just, the Ravens are better. I still think there's a clear two best teams in the NFL, the Ravens and the 49ers. And I actually did say going into that game in one of our last shows before the break that it didn't really matter what happened in that Raven 49ers game. My opinion about both teams wasn't going to change, even if one blew the other out.
Right. And that's just the way it is. I mean, then you get the Steelers go on the road, and, with our boy Mason Rudolph, he's playing. That offense has not looked that good, in a year.
Yeah, and I hear Tomlin asked Kenny Pickett to back up Mason Rudolph, and Pickett declined. So I don't know if that's just a matter of I don't want to come back until I'm fully ready. Maybe Tomlin just didn't feel comfortable with Trubisky as the backup, right? Like, we'll take a hobbled you over Trubisky at this point, Kenny. Right? You'll start when you're ready, but just in case. So
I will say one thing, having known Mike Tomlin for a number of years, you better not say no to Mike Tomlin. So if Kenny Pickett says, "Coach, I can't go," that's the response, the best response. The only response to him if you want to ever play for him again, is that response. If it's the response is I don't want to be the backup, that response is not going to get you on the field anytime soon, and it doesn't matter who you are. So yeah, I think the response from Pickett was, "Coach, I'm just not ready yet. Maybe I'll be ready if we can make it to the playoffs."
That's exactly what I was thinking, because the reports say, Kenny Pickett refused to play, but I always take that with a grain of salt, because that could be some jackass just trying to get some clicks. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like get the trendy story out there. Always refuse, the little clashing heads, when in reality it was just I'm not comfortable playing yet. And Tomlin was probably saying, okay, I understand. I just, I'd prefer 30% you over 100% Trubisky at the backup situation.
It also, and a lot of times it happens this way. The medical staff says, I know he wants to play, but he don't play him.
That's the other thing too, right? Like we saw that with Geno Smith,
right,
a few weeks ago, where he was claiming, I'm ready to go, but the team doesn't want me to play, so it's a game time decision.
Right. So my guess is that that Kenny, the good news, bad news is they have to finish their season against Baltimore in Baltimore. Now they play each other really tough. They have played each other phenomenally difficult, but the Ravens have nothing to play for this week. I mean, this is if they want to take the week off, they can take the week off.
Yeah, I'll tell you this much, Jim. The Steelers are getting a huge break this week, because even though the game's in Baltimore, they're a 4-point favorite coming into this one. Yeah. And that tells me right there, Vegas already knows this is the second string plus team coming out for the Ravens in this one. You're not seeing a single starter play in this game. They've locked up the division, the number 1 seed. They don't need this game. They can lose and they get their first week bye. They'd rather just, rest up and get healthy for the playoffs.
Well, the other thing is they could play the first string for a half a game, and then second half could be, nobody. But these two teams don't like each other, and the concept of the Ravens keeping the Steelers out of the playoffs is probably pretty interesting. And it looks like everybody in that division is going to end up with a 500, above 500.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, because obviously the Bengals could go 8-9, but the Bengals are also favored against the Browns this weekend, because they know the Browns aren't going to play any starters.
Right.
They're in the same situation where they've locked up the number 1 wild card.
Right.
So
you're going to see a lot of DTR this week. They're even going to rest Flacco.
Yeah, this is definitely probably the worst week in NFL from a betting standpoint, just because
you don't know.
You really have to watch this week before you place your bets. Just make sure that you know who's playing and who's not playing. And when you take a team, even if you're going to take one of these teams to cover the spread or even win the game, make sure you're doing it under impression. I know they're starting second stringers, but I still think they're that much better.
Well, and then you've got the game with Jacksonville. I'm guessing that Trevor Lawrence will be back. I think they got away with playing Carolina and said, okay, look, we're playing Carolina. We can coast on this one, but we're going to have Trevor Lawrence back for that final game.
Yeah, definitely. That was a game they needed to win, and right now they still control, even though it's a 3-way tie. All they have to do is win and get in. Similar situation of what's going on with our official, quarterback team. And I'm curious to see what they're going to do this week, because obviously I believe Baker took a hit to the ribs. Yeah. And so there's a chance he doesn't play. And I mean, even if he doesn't play, you can't lose to the Panthers.
No.
And it's the same situation for the Bucs. You win and the division is yours. It doesn't matter who finishes with the same record as you. So it's going to be interesting to see, does Baker play through the injury that he loves doing and risk, having one of those games where he doesn't do well because he's fighting through pain? Or do they just sit him and say, we're going to trust we can take the Panthers with the backup quarterback, even though we have to win this game?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things in that game against New Orleans, they had a horrible first half. But in the second half, there were two things I don't think I've ever seen. One, they had two wide receivers in space, okay, totally in space, nobody around them, who fumbled the ball. They caught the pass and dropped the ball.
Seen a lot of that this weekend.
And
though.
it's like, whoa, what? Wait a minute, how is that possible? You make the play, but oops, you got the dropsies. Any one of those would have kept them in the game, and any one of them could have put them in a position to win the game. But it wasn't meant to be, and so you got to end that season in Carolina. And Carolina, you got to believe 30 of those players have got the car running, and the family in the car sitting waiting outside the stadium for the game to be over.
Oh, come on, Jim. The family's not waiting at the stadium.
Oh, that's probably true.
They're at home watching on TV, and right. They're like, just tell us when you're coming back.
But they're waiting at the airport to fly out of town. One of the two. Get us out of here. We got to live here for for a few more weeks, and then we're out of town. But yeah, it's those are one of those things where, again, you got to watch the betting lines, because some of these teams have zip to play for, and there's no reason for them to play.
Yeah,
now,
definitely.
Before we get to last night's big college games, I got to say that Kirby Smart and Georgia, who dismantled Florida State in the Orange Bowl game, I give Kirby a lot of credit, because the first thing out of his mouth in the press conference was, we got to fix this situation where players don't want to play, and because of the draft or because of the transfer portal, because he said, I think we're a better football team than Florida State. I don't think we're 60 plus points better than them. And I mean, he before he even took 1 minute of giving praise to Georgia, he took pity on Mike Norvell, who was standing over there, who had 20 players opt out, and of the 20 players, 13 of them were starters.
Yeah, definitely. He seemed a little pissed off by it too.
Yeah.
He wanted to. He clearly, he wanted to kick their teeth in, but he wanted to kick in a good team, not this skeleton squad that they're sending out there. Like, come on. And I agree. I get these players, they want to save themselves from injury, but we're seeing the active NFL players come out, and they're upset about it. Bowl games used to mean something. Now they don't mean anything. Mm-hmm. So definitely something needs to be fixed, whether you move the transfer portal back a bit, where you can't enter it until after the season's officially done, or but even then, you got to fix out the opt-out situation somehow, right? So it needs to be done. Something needs to be done here by the NCAA, but they probably won't, because there's just so much money getting thrown around now.
Well, credit to Bo Nix, okay? Bo Nix could have done the same thing, okay? But he said, look, I played all season with these guys. They're my guys. The coaching staff was my coaching staff. They took a chance on me when, Auburn cut me loose. So he played, and he threw for, I think, 4 touchdowns and ran for 1 or something like that. I mean, some amazing thing. But I mean, Bo Nix is a legit top quarterback in the draft. And it's like, he played, and, good on him for playing.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those situations where, we had such a great season. This is going to be my last game with these guys. I want to play one more, right? And at this rate, they didn't have the season they wanted because they didn't get into the playoffs, but it looks like, we might be right that their only 2 losses this year came against the best team in the country. So like, can you really say Oregon's not the second best team in the country? Because they didn't get a chance to play those other playoff teams. But I think if you put them up against Bama, Texas, even Michigan, I think there's a good chance that you would see Oregon and Washington in the final once again. So definitely good on Bo Nix for finishing the season strong with a great team.
Right. And he was one of those guys who, felt that, that he owed it to the team. And, you got to respect that. You've got to respect it. He wasn't going to let his team. Now, whether they were playing Liberty, so maybe he felt, like, okay, I'm not gonna. These guys aren't gonna hurt me. But regardless, he played out there and did himself proud. Now that takes us to last night, where I think that one of they were they weren't the prettiest of games, but they were two of the kind of games that you sit back and go, I'm glad these four teams played each other in the playoffs. I'll use your term, in the invitational.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for what happened last night, because nobody wants 2 13-1 teams in the finals, and it's a rematch of a game that we already saw earlier this season.
Right.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Against 2 undefeated teams. And honestly,
and they deserve it.
Exactly. I was going to say, we talk up a lot about Oregon, but these two definitely probably are the 2 best teams in the country by far. Michigan definitely in the same bracket as Washington, Oregon, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a great national championship. And I mean, there's nothing to say. Obviously, we had the one game was third ever overtime game,
right,
in the semis, and then the other one was just crazy. Was just they just dominated. I don't care what anybody says. Texas had no answer for those NFL wide receivers on Washington.
No, and Penix is not a mobile quarterback, okay, but he's smart enough to move the pocket, and he was making some. I got to tell you, he probably made himself more money last night as NFL teams looked at him and said, wait a minute, this kid is making throws that, he's dropping the ball in the bucket every time. He's not. He's doing over the shoulder throws. He's doing, he's hitting guys right between the numbers. And it doesn't, you've made the point, and it's a good one. It helps when you got probably 4 wide receivers who all are going to play on Sunday next year.
Yeah, this whole offense is a Sunday offense.
Right. This is linemen, the whole 10, the whole group is, you got 22 guys who are going to be playing football, in the pros, if not next year, the following year. So, but they executed and they played well. Now, did Texas, hang around? They did, but they didn't dominate in any of the aspects.
No, they never really led in the game, and there was never really a time in the game where you said Texas has got this. And remember, they were a 4-point favorite as well.
Right.
So yeah, that was one where Washington, and honestly, Washington made mistakes. That game could have been a lot worse. There was that point where it was 14-7. Washington's getting the ball back. They could easily end the game right there. I know it was still early, but they muffed the punt. Yeah. And obviously give the ball back. Texas ties it up. But still, Texas started with the ball. They were playing catch up the whole time. And then they started muffing punts after, where it's like they saw what Washington did and they said, well, they're beating us. Maybe it's working somehow.
Well, they watched the Michigan game the game before and said, okay, look, it's fun to muff punts. I'll give Kirk Herbstreit some credit here. The kid that muffed the punt that almost gave him a touchdown at the end of the game. He muffed it right around the 1 or 2 yard line, end up on the 1.5 the half yard line. He said, look, the kid could have totally been flummoxed by it, but he had the presence of mind to grab the ball and make sure that at least it wasn't in the end zone when they tackled him. So, he was trying. He was definitely trying. But both, if you looked at some of those games, look at how the Alabama's special teams were terrible.
Yeah, there was a lot of special team mistake. It seemed so casual too, because a few of the times when Texas was dropping the ball on those kick returns, like the guy was like just casually picking it up too. It felt like there was no urgency. You got five guys about to enclose on you, and you're just like, oh, don't worry, I'm just gonna get this, and then gets up and he gets murdered. But like. I don't know. It seemed like it was too lax, even on both sides, really.
Yeah.
Right? All four teams. It was a very lax special teams effort, which is ironic because you got guys like Kalen DeBoer was a special teams expert at one point, and Nick Saban, I believe, he's got some special teams. Experience as well.
It's in his DNA. He's had some special teams experience. But it was as I said, the games weren't great, but they were entertaining. And I think that's probably all you can ask for. Now, from a betting standpoint, how were they from your situation? I mean, it was a lot of I would think it was a lot of consternation as the game went on, going, okay, depending upon who you bet on, it's still the game was in the balance, both because they weren't that big of spreads.
Yeah, it was a bit stressful just because I had a lot on Michigan, I had a lot on Washington, and I even parlayed them together. So it was one of those where I needed both to win to have a big day. And it panned out that way. But yeah, definitely more so the Michigan game, just because they looked so dominant in the first half. Yeah. And in the second half, they did nothing. And it was mainly because they abandoned the run game, which was dominating Alabama so much in the first half. And there was something I didn't understand, sort of similar to how Washington on those, 3rd and 1s and 4th and 1s, they just kept trying to run it down Texas's throat. And it's like passing has been what you're having success at. Right. Just throw another 60-yard pass. They won't be expecting it. But yeah, it was definitely, considering I had the 4 points in the pocket with Washington, the Michigan game was a lot more stressful to watch.
Well, the other thing in that game with Alabama, when they got down to the play, into the overtime, right? And they're on that 4th down play, and you're looking at them and go, wait a minute, you're going to run between the tackles, which is the place where Michigan makes their money. And you got all that speed on either side. Why don't you do an RPO, run pass option, and go to the corner? Because the corners, when they went to the edge, that's where they were making their money. They didn't make it between the tackles. And running what in essence was a quarterback draw when you need to get 4 yards against a Michigan team that doesn't give that kind of stuff up made no sense to me. That play call was just totally, I don't know what they were thinking.
Yeah, I think Saban was banking on the fact that they're not expecting a quarterback run on 4th and 4 with the game on the line. So we have an element of surprise there. But yeah, and it didn't help that the snap was low. So, the play was kind of blown up from the start. But even if the snap is right on the money, you're absolutely right. There's no way he's even getting through the line of scrimmage there. He's getting eaten right when he hits the line.
Those offensive and defensive linemen in Michigan are big boys. Okay, move them, and to their credit, they didn't get moved a lot during that entire game. You really think they're going to leave and go somewhere whenever the game's on the line? I don't think so. Those boys in the center are going to stay in the center. They're not moving anywhere. And plus, you got linebackers. Well, and then remember that you're basically, and people sometimes forget this, they're in the 4-yard line. There's 10 yards of an end zone. You've got 14 yards to make a play in. So your field is incredibly condensed. Whenever you go up the middle, you've got everything's there. Your linebackers, everyone is in the center of the field. So why would you not go left or right or wherever? I don't know which hash they were on, but it doesn't matter. You've got a guy who's got speed they've got wide receivers, they got all kinds of running backs, they got everything you could need to try to at least string the play out on the outside. It just made no sense to go in to try to get a quarterback draw.
Yeah, definitely some questionable calls there.
Yeah.
Even by Michigan, just as I
Oh,
said,
yeah.
abandoning the run in the second
Yeah.
half is what like puts you in that hole. And how did you end up scoring the winning touchdown in overtime? You ran the ball with Blake
two running plays.
Gee,
Two
like,
running plays.
What a shock. What
It was
dominated the whole first half.
A 2-play drive. Okay, so you know, that was bizarre, to say the least. But for the first time in forever, there's not going to be an SEC team in the finals.
And you know what?
Yeah.
No, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say the irony here is you got two teams who, if it wasn't for this particular, set up the way they set up the playoff, these two teams would have played in the Rose Bowl because one's would have been the final champion of the Pac-12 and the final champion of the Big Ten whenever, the two teams would have played in the Rose Bowl. So those were two teams who next year will play each other in the in conference, probably in the playoff championship game next season. And it'll be a very interesting situation. The irony is that Michigan earlier in the season, before the season started actually, had a game where they were going to play home and home with me, and you may remember this, a home and home with Washington, and they got out of the contract.
You're going to have to play them now.
Yep. Sooner or later, you will have to play them. And I think that's going to be a really amazing thing. Just a couple of quick thoughts. Caleb Williams, we know, didn't play for USC, but boy, the kid they brought in as a backup, what an amazing job he did.
Yeah, they played very well. I was on
5
USC
touchdowns he threw for.
Yeah, definitely. Credit to them. Obviously, so I think we said Will Howard was going there. Apparently not official yet. I don't know what I was looking at. Some of these articles are very confusing, but they're USC. They're still looking for that quarterback. Technically, maybe they have it in house, but I'm sure they're going to bring in a guy. But it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of USC team we have next year.
Well, it looks like DJU Yawanga is going to FSU. So
yeah,
and it looks like Cam Ward is going to Miami. So, and don't ask me why, but he must,
they liked the rivalry, Washington State, Oregon State. They want to keep it alive.
FSU and Miami, yeah. But I do think that SC may have found that quarterback because that kid played a heck of a game for them. So let me there was one thing I wanted to look up while we're doing it. Anything on the agenda for this week from the game betting standpoint?
Yeah, not really much. This week is such a slow week, obviously, because we just had the new year, and now we're in that lull. The college football season's over. We just have the national championship on Monday. Even NFL, there's no Thursday night game. Nobody's gonna play this weekend anyway, right? It's everybody's looking ahead. Half the league is looking ahead to the playoffs, and the other half is looking ahead to the golf courses. So, yeah, it's one of those situations where now you really start to get into the basketball swing more because the conference schedule is starting with the college basketball. So probably that's the most exciting thing to watch this week. I know we got some good Big Ten matchups tonight, and throughout the week we're gonna have some good ranked teams playing conference games. So we'll get a better idea where these teams are at.
So here we go. The conferences in the bowl games this year, as we head into the off season. 3-3 in their conference games. The ACC had 11 teams playing conferences, in bowl games. They went 5-6. Big 10 had 9 teams, and Big 12 had 9 teams. Hang on one quick second so I can turn off this audio, which I didn't even know was there. The Big 10 had 9 teams in, as did the Big 12. They went 5-4. Conference USA went in the 4 games they had was 2-2. Independent was 1-0. Hang on. There we go. Turn that off. The Pac had 8 games. Played 8 games. They went 5-3. The SEC had 9. They went 5-4. Sunbelt had 12 teams play, 5-7, and the MAC had 6 teams play. They were 2-4. So that's where your bowl games went and who played. The ACC. The ACC. I'm trying to see who won in the ACC. Georgia Tech beat UCF. Duke beat Troy. Virginia Tech beat Tulane. Carolina lost to West Virginia. SC beat Louisville. That was a quality win in the Holiday Bowl. BC beat SMU. Next year, those teams will be in the same conference. Rutgers beat Miami. Kansas State beat NC State. Clemson beat Kentucky. And Georgia decimated Florida State. And in the game of the week, as far as college is concerned, South Florida beat Syracuse 45-0. So yeah, the blue blood programs did okay. It's the others that didn't do so much. Now, my understanding is the early line has Michigan up by 4.5 over Washington.
Yeah, 4 or 4.5, depending where you get it.
Mm-hmm. Is that line going to move, you think?
It depends. I mean, it's tough to say. I think it might move maybe closer to the game as of right now.
Right.
It'll probably stay like this. I think the thing is, right, they have a lot. I think even DraftKings puts out the lines before the game, the semifinals are even played. So they have, you could bet on like each possible scenario.
Sure.
But yeah, this is one I think they've had enough time to figure out what they want the line in this game to be.
And we'll see where the money goes.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's going to be that. We have some key. Miami can still blow the East, and Buffalo can still win it. So there's some games that are, we talked about it. There's some games that we were sitting there going, but there are some meaningful games as we get here down the stretch on Sunday and Saturday. Let me just pop them up real quick, and we'll leave after that. But there's some definite games that I think we're gonna be focused on in that. And okay, where are we real quick? Let me go back up. It would be week 17 in your programs, for those of you who don't know. By the way, the Steelers, Mike Tomlin kept his record intact, 17 years without a losing season as the coach of the Steelers. There's a model of consistency from that standpoint. So here we go, week 18 in your NFL. And Saturday, Pittsburgh at Baltimore, Houston at Indianapolis. Those are the ESPN ABC games. And Saturday night football is Buffalo at Miami. Sunday night football is Buffalo at Miami. that's going to be the game that decides who wins the East.
Yep, pretty much.
Minnesota at Detroit. That's a meaningless game. Tampa Bay is at Carolina. We said that's for the South. Tampa Bay needs to win it to get the South. Although theoretically New Orleans could lose and Atlanta could lose. Atlanta plays New Orleans. So if Atlanta beats them, then Atlanta could win if Tampa Bay loses. Jacksonville, Tennessee. That's a big game for Jacks. Chicago, Green Bay is meaningless. Philadelphia, the Giants. I wouldn't say it's meaningless. I think Philadelphia needs to get back on track here real quick. Dallas is at Washington. That's a walkover for Dallas. The Rams in San Francisco. It's meaningful to the Rams. Seattle and your Arizona Cardinals. That's a big game for Seattle. Kansas City and the Chargers. There's no way the Chargers are in this, so that's not a big one. Denver and Vegas. That's interesting. So there you go. That's where we are for some of the games on Sunday and Saturday. There are some meaningful games on those 2 days. So there you go. Any final thoughts before we get out of here? First of all, let's make sure that everybody knows that, lest you were gone, folks, you know that in the show box below is how to get in touch with Mr. AMEDEUS and all his stuff he's got.
Yeah, make sure you check out my premium picks at bigowl.com, pickadvisor.com, and theinsidersroom.com. All the links are in the description below. I've had a very hot last 2 months, cooled off a bit this last week, but we're looking to get back on track in January. Had a 2-1 day yesterday with my 2 college football plays that won, lost in the NBA, but taking a break from the NBA tonight. I got 3 plays up for college basketball, so you can go check that out. I'm on a huge run in college basketball for most of the season now, so yeah, definitely some money to be made there.
There you go. All right, boys and girls, it's going to be fun. It's been good to have AMEDEUS back, and we're going to be here for the stretch run, and we'll start playing with some things tomorrow and start talking about some maybe some college basketball and where the conferences are, and giving you a little idea of what to look forward to, because conference play begins in earnest this week, and so we'll get to see some of the top conferences play. So, okay, everybody, you all have a great day. Thanks for being back with us. See you on tomorrow around 2:00.